Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Worldviews. Today, we are joined by Dr. Philip Goff. He's a philosopher at Durham University whose work explores consciousness, panpsychism, and the purpose of the universe. Once an atheist, he later embraced Christianity and a journey that has deeply shaped his philosophical outlook. He is an author and speaker as well. Philip, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much, Devon. I'm looking forward to having a little chat.
Yeah. Can you just kick us off with what your personal upbringing was like and what first sparked your interest in philosophy?
My personal upbringing, yeah, well, religiously, I was raised Catholic in a sort of very vibrant Catholic church in Liverpool. Um, although by the time I was 14, I decided I didn't believe in God, and so refused to get confirmed, upset my grandmother. But I think interest in philosophy from very early on. I think I'm interested in sort of how it all fits together. You know, the different stories we tell about the world, the scientific story, the story about right and wrong, good and bad, the story about feelings and experiences or free will. How do they all fit together? And actually, just one example of that just connects the two things I've just said. I do remember at a very early age, I was very interested in. I thought I wanted to be a physicist at first. Actually, I was very interested in black holes and Big Bang, and thinking how does that story of the Big Bang fit together with the story of Adam and Eve I'm hearing at church? You know, how do they? I think I asked a priest that, and so this is what I, how does it all fit together? And my parents sent me to talk to a physicist, but he's but a few conversations he said you're probably more interested in philosophy. I think I was asking him questions that you can't really answer with experiments so easily. But anyway, yeah, so it's just how I've always been, really. It's carried on. Managed to make some money from it,
Okay,
sort of.
and yeah, and I guess what age were you? Because how long have you been officially a Christian now, would you say?
It's difficult to say because, well, here's what. So I guess about a year ago, I went public as coming out as a heretical Christian, how I self-identify. But actually, what I haven't been secret about this, but I've talked about a little bit in my last book, Why the Purpose of the Universe, towards the end. I actually returned to religion in my early 30s. I'm 46 now. I returned to church going, but sort of taking it all metaphorically. I was very influenced by the very liberal biblical scholar Marcus Borg, whose real approach is definitely being a spiritual person, thinking there's some greater ineffable reality at the core of things, but taking the specifics of Christianity more figuratively, not necessarily believing in a literal resurrection or that Christ is uniquely God. Um, but seeing the Christian story as a way of coming to a deeper understanding of what God is. So that was how I returned to Christianity, and I suppose it was kind of feeling the absence of, as I got a bit older, maybe of the community, the spiritual community. Um, it's all very well. You can be spiritual on your own, but connecting your spiritual life to the life of the community. So that's how I returned to religion, like 15 years ago. And then I guess for various reasons that we could get onto, maybe I've slowly gone from taking it all as a big metaphor to a sort of non-standard form of belief, and that's just been a slow, gradual process. I kind of went public with it a year ago because I wanted to sort of let this settle in your head for a long time before that. But it's been a very slow, long process, I think, getting there.
Yeah, so I guess was it fair to say community was the catalyst? But I guess what was like the final impending, like, oh, okay, now this is starting to feel like this is actually a real thing.
Depends what you mean by a real thing. If I mean, from when I started going back to church, it was a real thing. It was meaningful to me. I believed in God in some sense, and my spiritual life, my spiritual community, understanding God through the character of Jesus that was very real, and that was my religious life, and I was very, very happy with that. So in that sense, that was a real thing. Um, but then if you're talking about moving to a position of more belief rather than taking it all as a metaphor, um, I think there are head and heart reasons behind that, which I don't know whether you want to take separately. There are more sort of intellectual, philosophical reasons on the one hand, and also more sort of spiritual, hearty reasons. Hearty, that's not the good adjective, is it? But I don't know which of those do you want to take though? Which of those do you
Yeah,
want to
let's
take
let's go
first?
let's go philosophically first.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's just the sort of what turned into this. My last book, the Why book, was over like I think so many people see everything in terms of this black and white dichotomy. God or atheism. Richard Dawkins or the Pope. It's like pick your teams. And I just came to think both of these sides have something they can't explain. Both get something right and something wrong. So I think, the classic problem with the traditional God, understood as all knowing, all powerful, perfectly good, is why suffering? Why this horrific suffering we find in the world? Why would a loving God who can do anything allow so much pain and imperfection in the world? So that's the problem with the traditional belief in God. But I think there's things atheists can't explain as well. What I focused on a real lot in my academic research is the so-called fine-tuning of physics for life, this strange seeming fact of our current theories that for life to be possible, certain numbers in fundamental physics had to fall in a very, very narrow, tight range, like Goldilocks porridge, not too big, not too small, just right. And it seems, on the face of it, wildly improbable that all of these numbers would be in the range needed for life just by chance. So I was thinking, like, I was wrestling with this for ages. Um, there seemed to be knockdown arguments against both. And then I realized at some point, I think like a eureka moment, these arguments aren't pushing in opposite directions necessarily, right? If you go for something God-ish, but not the traditional God, then you can have your cake and eat it. You can account for both fine tuning and suffering. So in the Why book, I consider like a range of these middle way options, and the one I guess I now sign up to in my religious life is the idea of a loving God that's just not all powerful. I think you have to give up one. Either God's not good, God's not all powerful, or God's not all knowing. I think actually giving up God being all powerful can actually form a very simple, elegant explanation of both the fine tuning and the suffering. And I guess this is the next stage, but fits actually quite well with Christianity, surprisingly. But yeah, so that was more the intellectual stuff that drew me back into it, I think. Although in a slightly non-standard way, as you can see.
Yeah, we'll dive into the limited power God, but what was I guess, the personal part that got you? Was that, I guess, back to the community piece?
Discovering more about different kinds of Christianity, actually. I mean, I guess that growing up, I thought Christianity was this idea that Jesus, we're sinners. Jesus was punished for our sins, and that's how we're kind of saved. And I've always, I mean, with all due respect to people who hold it, I've always found that a very implausible view. I mean, we could go into why does it fulfill justice to punish an innocent person? Anyway, I've also always had deep issues with that, and I still do. But then I discovered, reading more that that view was essentially invented by the Protestant reformers, or Calvin in particular, 500 years ago. It's not been defining of Christianity from the start. And there's been different views of all Christians believe the death and resurrection of Christ brings salvation, but what is that all about? And in particular, attracted to how the Eastern Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, has always thought about this, which is much more of a sort of mystical idea of unity, the idea that it's all about God and creation becoming one. Not in the sense of becoming the same thing, but that coming into a deeper intimacy, a deeper unity. They believe that God shared in our form of existence so that we can share in God's form of existence. They call this theosis or divinization. They take this to be what was captured by Jesus' metaphor of the vine and the branches. He says, "I am the vine, you are the branches." This deep, intimate unity, and so I just find this deeply spiritually resonates with me. So that's the heart reason. But I also think it fits quite well with this God of limited powers. I mean, that's not the Eastern Church doesn't believe in a God of limited powers. That's why I'm slightly heretical. But I actually would argue that they fit quite well together. So that was the sort of final jigsaw piece that it all fit together. There's this. I suppose I see the Eastern Church. It's this oneness and unity that I've always been a spiritual person, and that sort of mysticism that thought I found in kind of Buddhism when I was younger is here present in Christianity in a very ancient form of Christianity. Uh, one of the oldest. I mean, it's hard that there was the split with Catholics and Eastern Orthodox. It has a claim to be the earliest form of Christianity, and also this God of limited powers, making sense of the intellectual issues, and it all fitted together. And there we have it.
Yeah, wow. And you currently attend an Orthodox church?
No, well, so here's the next. There's so many pieces to this. I'm not a member of the Eastern Orthodox Church. Well, we do have one in Durham where I live. I would like to visit some point. But well, look, I don't believe everything they believe. For example, a God of limited powers. I mean, more importantly, look, I'm a very liberal, progressive person. They don't have women priests. They think gay sexual relations are sinful, and I think those views are false and harmful. And so I'm a practicing member of the Anglican Church, which is a very broad church. Has more conservative wings, more liberal wings. I guess I'm in quite a liberal church, and so I guess I've found a sort of my spiritual home in a marriage of the mysticism of the Eastern Church and the liberal flexibility of the Anglican Church. So if it was just the liberal flexibility, it'd be a bit like, well, it seems a bit empty, a bit kind of wet or something. But they've got that spiritual depth that is at the core of the Eastern Church, and it's not exclusive to the Eastern Church. It's perfectly compatible with Anglican forms of Christianity. Um, so the mysticism of the Eastern Church and the more flexible nature of the Anglican Church. That's where I've found my home, really.
Oh, okay, I see. And when you're coming back into it, coming back to the church and Christianity and whatnot, because usually when someone's, say, a Christian, then deconverts into atheism, they go through this kind of existential crisis and sort of type of thing. Did you experience any of that going from atheism back into Christianity?
You see, I don't think it's been so black and white as that because I think I've always been I've been basically most of my life spiritual but not religious, right? So I've always thought that it's not been like there's nothing. It's not like I've had Richard Dawkins' view, right? I've always believed in something. And then when I returned to religion, it was something, but now I'm connecting it to a community. And then as it's become more of a belief than it's all a metaphor, um, I do feel there's a deeper spirituality there. You know, the way the Eastern Church talks about theosis of God dwelling within us, I suppose, the way Paul talks in his sort of this kind of mystical union with Christ. I feel a deeper engagement and involvement with that, and yeah, and a deeper happiness and a more control of my ego. I think that would probably be my. I don't feel I crave power or money. I'm kind of lucky that I just don't. But I've got a bit of an ego, and helping me, you know, calm those baser instincts and more open to live in the present moment. So yeah, it's not gone from. I mean, what I will say is it's been difficult in that it's so bloody countercultural. I mean, especially in the UK. I don't know anyone who's religious outside of my church community. It's kind of funny though, actually, because there are also a lot of faith schools. So my kids, like many kids, go to Church of England school, but none of the parents of my kids' friends who I'm friends with the parents, none of them are religious. And then it's weird, like we're going to, but then they do nativities and they do Easter plays where, one of them is Christ on the cross and stuff. And I was sitting there and I was thinking this weird experience. It's like I've got this weird hobby and all our kids have to learn about it. It's like I'm into Star Trek and all the kids have to do Star Trek plays. But anyway, but it is counterculture. And I suppose, especially giving talks to academics, it feels uncomfortable because there is still that sense that this is kind of a bit, unscientific or something. And so that's been hard. But yeah, no, it's been good. It's made me a bit happier, I think.
Wait, don't mind, hope you don't mind me asking, is your wife a Christian?
No, that's another thing. So my wife is not a religious person, and so I take the kids on my own. She gets some time to herself, but that's fine. Um, she was thinking of Wicca at one point. I was thinking that would be fun if people from church ask where your wife is. Oh no, she's a witch. But anyway, she didn't end up going for Wicca. I mean, she's a spiritual person. Uh, very into nature and stuff. But no, like I mean, very in the UK, very well. I say very few people are religious, although, well, I'm just finished. I've just on Friday finished my new book, which is on a sort of reimagining of religion and research for that. There are pretty extraordinary stats coming out right now that there does seem to be a change. I guess maybe you know about this. That the decline of religion in the West that's been going on for so long seems to have stalled, and amongst under 25s in the UK and the US, it seems to be going in reverse. In the UK, the number of under 25s has quadrupled who go to church has quadrupled. Some extraordinary stats. So I'm still trying to work this. Something's going on. So it's exciting, interesting times. But yeah. So I do. I guess I feel like a bit of a weirdo because no one I know is religious, but it's sort of a challenge as well to sort of try and persuade people that this kind of makes sense. And I do enjoy that challenge. It's what I've always done with my work, actually. I've always had sort of, not deliberately, I don't think, but non-standard views. And then you get the challenge of trying to persuade people that it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right, the whole increase of people in the UK seem to be coming towards religion has increased. I only know this because Justin Brierley told me, and
Yes,
I was like, "Okay,
Justin's
I'll take
been.
your word for it," 'cause you seem well tuned into the religious climate over
Well,
there.
he's had his finger on the pulse. He was saying this before there was any stats, and in a way, he's claiming. I think there've been like a few polls now that are confirming this, but he was saying it for the last few years before there was actually any data. Just his sense of observing what's going on. So, yeah, it's strange.
How Because you're in an interesting spot too, based on what you just said, your whole people kind of view what you're doing as, like, a hobby because it's so secular over there. And you have the ability to engage with these people. But it seems like also based on what Justin was saying that a lot more people than we realize are open just to having the conversation about it. I'm sure you're very much seem to be the one that very much opens those doors and has those conversations and understands that people are open to discussing the idea of God, whether or not Christianity is true and whatnot.
Yeah, I think new atheism is very passé. I mean, I mean, both philosophers hate Richard Dawkins in terms of his philosophy of religion, not his popular science. Both atheist and believing people working on philosophy of religion. He just because he just wasn't trained as a philosopher. He didn't know what he was talking about. And you're trying to get your students to deal with these arguments, and they'd read Richard Dawkins, and it's just a mess. So I mean, intellectually, it was awful, but there was all. also that, I mean, what they tried to do, I think, was make it okay to be obnoxious and rude and dismissive of religion, didn't they? Like certainly sort of Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins. And I think nowadays a lot of young people just think that's not very pleasant, whether you're religious or not. So I do think there does seem to be a greater openness. I don't know quite where this is going, but there's definitely an openness. I suppose what I'm trying to do in my work is this new book I've just finished. It's probably going to be about a year before it's out. Is kind of helping perhaps more liberal, spiritual, but not religious people to engage with religion and make sense of it, whether that's intellectually or whether that's sort of in terms of ethical issues, or whether a lot of times I find it's people worried about what they see as dogmatic certainty, that you've got to be totally certain it's right and there's no flexibility. So I suppose I'm trying to articulate ways in which more liberal-minded people can return to religion. Now, just to be clear, it's, as I say in the book, it's not that I hate conservatives, but it's, I think there's often like a balance in society of conservatives and progressives. People who feel we have to move forward a little bit in certain respects, and then people who are thinking, well, hold on, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater, and there can be that balance. And so I think anyone who's interested in revitalizing organized religion and sort of stopping the decline, you're going to want to bring in both sides of society, aren't you? You're not going to want it just for one political wing. And so I think it would be nice, whether you're religious or not, to have more of a balance of different voices, different perspectives within religion. And so, yeah, these are the things I'm wrestling with this in this book, as well as the sort of philosophical arguments and things.
Yeah, do you find it somewhat challenging trying to engage people on the other side without compromising the message of the gospel?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's a difficult question, isn't it? I suppose some more traditional Christians would think I am compromising it too much. I talk about in the book, there's my friend Tom from my church, who's a physics professor, an older guy, goes to church every week, very involved in the community, a deeply spiritual person, believes in God in some sense, but he doesn't believe any of the specifics of Christianity. I don't think he believes someone literally rose from the dead. And I guess some traditional people might say, well, should we allow people like that at church? Should we allow them to take communion? And aren't we just gonna lose everything? And I think, and different churches can have different perspectives, and that's fine. I think, well, look, we can keep the liturgy, we can keep the creeds, we can keep it all there, but let people interpret it how they want, let people have different views on the matter, slightly heretical views like myself, or maybe taking it all metaphorically. And I can see the panic and, it's just going to be a mess. But maybe trust in God, maybe trust in the Holy Spirit, that if you just bring people together in community, genuinely thinking about this, reading what our best academics, our best scientists, our best philosophers say about it, that we'll get to the truth on this. So I suppose I am more on the side of let's be more flexible, and I can see there's going to be a debate on that. So maybe, but and let the more traditional voices challenge me, and I'll challenge them, and we'll work out how it goes.
Yeah, interesting. Because your church, you said, is more progressive. So they probably have like I imagine like every church website, they have like a belief statement type of thing, and theirs is probably
I
more
mean, I
of a
say it's
loose.
more progressive. I would say it's the kind of church where they're not gonna, like many. There are more evangelical Anglican churches, but there are your average Anglican church. I don't think anyone's going to be sort of checking you got the right beliefs and you understand, and sort of trying to hold you to that. Definitely not a belief statement. No, we don't say the Nicene Creed. We have a sort of very minimal creed that mentions the Father, mentions the Son, mentions the Holy Spirit, but has some sort of very nebulous comments about them. So yeah, but I suppose it's unique. What I like about the Church of England was that it was brought into existence because the king wanted a divorce. and so and the Pope wouldn't let him have it, right? Or an annulment of marriage. Um and so it doesn't have that big ideology, but it has the ritual, it has the history, it has the you know, I suppose I'm a small c conservative in that way of, these things can hold us together. Here's another way of thinking about it, right? Why think the guys in the 4th century got it all right? When, it's only in the 4th century, 300 years after Christ, that the Bible was finally compiled, all 27 books. The Gospels have been there a long time, and the Nicene Creeds put together. Why do we think they got it right? Like what the origins of Christianity 300 years earlier. I can understand why you're Catholic. If you're Catholic, you think, okay, the Holy Spirit's always guided the church in truth. But if you're a Protestant and you think the church went off the rails somewhere, well, why think it was right then? Why not use our best current biblical scholarship to re-examine that, to penetrate to the beginning? I'm interested in the view that um, that many leading biblical scholars of the 20th century have had, that the first Christians didn't separate the resurrection and the ascension as we find in Luke's gospel. That I debated this a bit with William Lane Craig and Lydia McGrew on Capturing Christianity as well. People are interested in that. In Luke's gospel, you have, Jesus comes out of the tomb, hangs around 40 days, 40 nights, or that's in Acts of the Apostles, and then ascends to heaven. But actually, some biblical scholars think that the first Christians thought that there was one event of for Jesus physically being returned to the Father, and thereby after experienced in sort of visionary experiences. So that's actually that's actually the sort of the view I accept in my faith. And you might say, well, that's not that's not historic Christianity. Well, I think there's a good case. It was historic Christianity. It was what the first Christians thought, not the Nicene guys 300 years later that for some reason Protestants think we have to accept. But these earlier guys. So let's have a discussion about that. So I'm getting slightly more provocative now.
No, that's
Keeps life
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, because how long have you been debating now?
How long have I been debating? I don't know, since I was about 4. I
I
guess,
guess on a professional stage.
professional, yeah. Gosh, it's got, yeah, loads. I've had lots of interesting debate with some leading scientists, the physicist Sean Carroll and Anil Seth, the neuroscientist. We've debated about 3 times now and learned a lot from these discussions. I suppose it just comes with the territory of philosophy in a way. It's all about discussion. It's all about, um, a, constructive debate. I think I love engaging with people I disagree with, and I can't understand why they're thinking that. But I want to. It's like I want to get inside your head. Tell me how you're looking at the world, and maybe I can learn something from that. I was doing a podcast for good few years with my friend Keith Frankish, who's the polar opposite to me on consciousness. I think consciousness is everywhere. He thinks it's kind of nowhere in a sense. And we've just been like trying to understand why are you thinking that? And so, yeah, I love all that. I love, constructive, spirited debate, but, friendly, not nasty.
Yeah, do you feel like despite the fact that you disagree with these people, that you have engaged in these debates and you've actually lost the debate itself?
I lost the debate. I think there was one. My first debate with Sean Carroll when he came on my Mind Chat podcast. People could take that out, take a look if they want. Um, maybe it at least looked like I lost the debate, because I think maybe in hindsight I was being a bit, "Oh, like, you're on my podcast and I'm being a friendly guest," and he was straight in there, very debatey, and in hindsight, maybe I should have, like, prepared instead of. And it's always hard as well when you're talking to you're debating a scientist. This because people don't know what the hell philosophy is, and people trust scientists. So you're debating a science, even if it's like a philosophical point. People always think, oh, it's just the scientist correcting the person. They don't understand science. But I guess that was the one I felt I looked worst at. And then I got him on again with my close friend, philosopher of science, Barry Lower, who I knew didn't agree with me, but I thought would make, a more modern, oh, there's two sides. But he was straight in debatey as well. And so I was like, so maybe I got a bit of an onslaught there. Um, so I mean, like I recently debated William Lane Craig, and I was going to do my usual, oh, I see what you say. But I was talking to my friend Jack Symes, who's public philosophy, and he was saying, that's not how Craig does arguments. He's going to be, researched and be. So with William Lane Craig, I was prepared to do it in that style, meet him as he does it. And, he was straight in 5 arguments why Philip is absolutely idiotic. And, but, so that was one where I was prepared to deal in that format. And I feel I've done, I feel in all the ones I feel in all the ones I've been prepared to do that debatey thing. I think I've done all right, at least stood my own. I think with Sean Carroll, when we finally had an in-person debate in a university in the US with the sort of student audience, and there were gasps from some of our comments because I said he wouldn't get a good grade in my course because he didn't understand the philosophical arguments. And anyway, but we had a drink afterwards. It was actually friendly. We sort of took in, but I think with that, actually, the audience seemed pretty split over who was right, and I take that as a win because, as usual, I've got the sort of anti-establishment position. I'm sort of up against this famous scientist saying particles are conscious. So if I get like half the audience, if the audience are like, then maybe he's right. That's okay. So yeah, so I guess maybe I'm being too kind to myself, but I guess I was sort of judge it from that side. That if I can like persuade people I'm not speaking total insanity, then I'm doing all
Yeah,
right.
yeah, because you debated obviously all these people had conversations as well with plenty of people such as Alice O'Connor, others too. Who would you say are like the top 3 to 4 people that you've had engagements with that were the most, I don't wanna say smart, I guess impressed you the most with their intellect?
Suppose it's just there's different kinds of intellect, isn't there? There's this sort of my friend Ian McGilchrist, who I've had 2 discussions. Oh no, 1 discussion with actually. Well, we've had lots of discussions in person, but 1 discussion sort of filmed. That was quite recently, actually. Anyway, he's very famous for the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, different kinds of intelligence. So I've done a few public events with Rowan. Mine went blank on his name then. Rowan Williams, former Archbishop of Canterbury. Actually, one of them was with Alex O'Connor. His depth, his spiritual, his way of bringing head and heart together with spiritual depth is so, enlightening and wonderful. Philip Pullman, the novelist of the His Dark Materials series, it's a BBC dramatization of recent. We've had a few public discussions, and his, again, novelist take on things as a literary thinker and how he articulates the philosophy from an artist's position has been very enlightening to me. And then I guess with Sean Carroll and Anil Seth, yeah, just learning from the conversations. I think we've learned from each other. Um, I think there must be about 12 hours of discussions of us online in each case, and yeah, just deepening your understanding, not persuading the other, but you do alter your view um, in certain respects. So yeah, that's a bit of a rubbish answer, but I suppose it's just different things to be got out of different discussions, and always the best discussions, of course, and not the ones in front of a camera, but uh, hidden away privately after a few whiskeys.
Yeah, yeah. Do you feel like you want I mean, what kind of debates, discussions are you looking forward to having in the future, or which ones do you desire to have in the future, and with whom, I suppose?
Um, who would I like to talk to? One of the earliest people I talked to in a high profile way was Joe Rogan. and and it was too early for me because I think I'd only kind of talked to academics, and I think I sort of know how to communicate these things. So, and Lex Friedman, and um maybe I should have another conversation with these guys when I'm sort of a little bit more had this taking time to learn how to articulate things in a more accessible way. Maybe I should think about that coming up to this new book in a year's time. Who would I like to debate? I don't know. It's ongoing discussions. Uh, Brian Cox is I don't know if you know Brian Cox in the US, but he's a big UK science communicator who I had a little bit of a Twitter row with him. And I think it was kind of friendly, but on how we're thinking about quantum mechanics and stuff, which might sound, why the hell am I arguing about quantum mechanics with a scientist? But some of the core issues of quantum mechanics are philosophical, and how exactly we're interpreting what's going on here. So yeah, I think I'd like to have more people who are, I think in many ways, scientism is the religion of our time. And what I mean by that is this idea that all questions are answered with experiments, right? You want to know something about reality, do an experiment. And I think increasingly, I mean, there are just obviously science is amazing, and where experiments are relevant, you should trust the experiments and you should work with them. But there are questions that can't be answered with an experiment. A lot of the philosophical issues of consciousness and quantum mechanics and morality and mathematical knowledge and the origins of the universe and so on. We do need philosophical reflection on these judgment calls, how we're interpreting the data. So I would like to have more arguments, I guess, with these scientific people who would just think, well, what the hell is philosophy? Let's just use science. I guess who's the guy you got in the US? Um, deGrasse Tyson. He's a bit like this, isn't he? One of these physicists, he seems like a great guy. He's a great scientist, but it's all like, what is that philosophy bullshit? I suppose that's what I'm most passionate about, is opposing that, is saying, no, look, you need philosophy as well. You need the science and the philosophy working together. So I suppose I'd like to have more of those discussions. Yeah, maybe you can hook me up with deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do there. 'Cause
Anil Seth was chatting with him recently. Maybe I'll chat to Anil and
yeah, you should try to
get him
talk
a
with that
brain.
guy, because yeah, he is kind of I mean, he's closed out to many things that aren't I mean, religion, philosophy. He's pretty closed out to both those things, it seems. And I did see that you were on Joe Rogan, like you just mentioned. What was that process like? Like, how's that even work? I'm always so curious when people go on Joe Rogan, like, do they just email you and they fly you out and that's it? And then you can sit down and talk with Joe? It's pretty
Um,
casual?
it's if you have a commercial publisher, then they assign you a publicist, 6 months before the book comes out, and then they try to set things up. And yeah, and actually, Joe Rogan. I mean, I think Joe Rogan, the publisher, the publicist contacts the producer, and then the producer gives Joe Rogan, I don't know, all the ideas. And I think Joe Rogan just goes for like what he like. I think he was instantly like this idea of panpsychism that I've defended, that's kind of consciousness is everywhere, very roughly. And so he was personally interested in that, and I was about to go, and then COVID hit. Like the very month I was going to go, the UK borders closed down with COVID, or the US borders closed down. And so it was another 2 years. And I thought, this isn't going to happen, is it? And actually, Joe Rogan was getting more controversial as the time went on. I just didn't really know who he was when I was first invited on. So probably it would have been an even worse interview, probably. but I think he was interested. He was interested in his panpsychism, so he wanted to have me on. And yeah, I think the one time I've flown business class actually. So weird.
One time.
Yeah, yeah. No, I fly economy, man. Well,
Nice.
sometimes the middle one. Yeah, I'm a man of the people. Also, just not rich. Also, just not rich. So, yeah. So, yeah, that was fun. That was interesting. So I went out. So yeah, he paid me to go over, and then I went on Lex Friedman's thing the day after, and yeah, Lex Friedman was just on his own, and then I don't think I've told this story on online actually, and he went to the bathroom or something, and he'd had it all set. He'd made notes. He'd read my book and made notes, and I kind of sneaked around the table and read his notes, and then I realized the camera was already on. So I'm worried, he must look back at the camera, and I'm sort of anyway. But yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? Sort of the art. Think about the art of a conversation. I think I'm going to start a podcast again. I've missed sort of not doing podcasts, and yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? It's like the printing press or something. This new technology that's opening things up. Sort of YouTube kind of replacing mainstream media in a way. It's all very exciting, and
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
shocked you don't have one. Or you had one, you stopped it?
I've been doing one for years with Mind Chat on Philosophy of Mind, but I guess we haven't done it for maybe nearly a year now, and I suppose we're sort of focused on different projects, and I'm maybe wanting to talk more about the religion stuff, and he's a very kind of atheistic, um, and he's maybe wanting to talk more about the more sciencey elements of consciousness. So maybe we're sort of, I mean, maybe we might do some more, but I don't think we're going to do them very regularly, and so. Yeah, I've maybe got some plans for another podcast, but
Wait, who's your partner?
I'm keeping it to my Keith Frankish, who's
Okay, Keith Frankish.
yeah, a philosopher with completely polar opposite opinions to me, and we've formed a lovely friendship, and been trying to work out why the hell the other person thinks the things they do. But yeah,
Yeah,
we met on a sailing ship in the Arctic 10 years ago because Dmitry Volkov, a Russian billionaire, wanted to spend some money getting a dozen philosophers on a sailing ship going around the Arctic talking about consciousness and free will. And so we were both invited to that, and we met up and spent a week on a boat. The late great Daniel Dennett was there as well, who'd passed away recently. So that was fun. I shared a cabin with um oh my god, what's his I keep blanking on names tonight. Anyway, someone else who's got completely the opposite opinions to me, but we got on very well. You can get on with people you disagree with. It's
yeah.
fun.
Well, actually, I didn't get a chance to ask you about your performance against William Lane Craig that we talked about earlier and your views on unlimited God. So
Oh, yeah.
I guess in the quick, concise summary, your views on unlimited God, and then how you thought your performance against William Lane Craig went.
Limited God. Yeah, so I just think it's where the evidence is pointing, in my view, this limited God thing, because I think traditional theists tie themselves up in knots trying to explain why God allows suffering. Traditional atheists tie themselves up in knots trying to explain why the universe is fine-tuned for life. So this simple idea that there is a loving God, um, and you can explain fine-tuning in terms of God's purposes, but God's just not all powerful. God's just not able to do whatever God wants. God's certain limitations in the kind of universe God's able to create. And then you explain the imperfections of it in terms of those limitations. And um yeah, and I think it sort of fits well with, I think, this core of Eastern Christianity, that God is sort of bringing the universe to perfection through becoming more intimately involved with it, sharing in our form of existence so that we can share in God's form of existence. So I guess my conception of Christianity is God's on his way to making a perfect universe, but has to do it in two stages. Firstly, creating a kind of okay universe with the right physics to evolve life, and then when it's evolved enough, bringing it to perfection by becoming more intimately involved with it, and the Jesus stuff being a crucial part of that. Um, so yeah, so that's you know I just have always been totally persuaded by the argument from suffering. That is a really powerful argument against God's existence. And I mean, look, it's obviously this is debatable. I'm not going to just say all the attempts to explain it are just obviously rubbish, but they're all sort of not entirely satisfying. And then I think this idea that God maybe just God's limit, it's just a very simple way around that. How did the discussion go? Yeah, it was good. I think it was good. I think I pressed him on challenges to his Molinist view. I don't know how much you want to go into that, but that's very important to his solution to the problem of evil. And I wanted to know, there's been some recent papers challenging the Molinist position. I was wondering what his position was on them, but he said, I haven't read them. And actually, after the debate, he said, can you send me those papers? And he's written a response to them for his big treatise he's currently working on. Do you know, he sent me this back in May, and I've just been so busy with this book, I haven't, he said just a couple of thousand words if you want to have a look at it. I think I'm planning next week. I feel terrible. I feel so honored. William Lane Craig sent me this, see what you think of it. And so, yeah, I think it was good. I think it was, it was passionate. It was, I guess I feel he was a little bit out of his depth on the philosophy of mind. I think he was saying things that, it's not his core area. And he was saying things like, this is axiomatic. Everybody thinks this. And I was like, no, they don't. So it was too much to talk about. We only had an hour. There was too much to talk. I just would have loved to go into so much more detail. What did yeah, I guess we ended with the resurrection. So my slightly non-standard view of the resurrection is that the resurrection and the ascension are the same event. And so the resurrection experiences were visionary rather than seeing and touching a body. And then he brandished N.T. Wright's text, The Resurrection of the Son of God, and said, I met N.T. Wright actually and read that book. And but he said, well, why did they use the word resurrection? Because it meant, um, what you think of as a body you can see and touch. And but yeah, my view on that is that my speculation, my hypothesis is that Jesus used the concept of resurrection during his ministry to his followers in order to make them understand as best he could what was going to happen, what the Eastern Church calls theosis, which I think is very well articulated in the Last Supper monologue in John's Gospel. So he used the idea of resurrection to communicate this to his followers. So that's why they interpreted this thing in the language, in the concepts of resurrection. And yeah, I feel he didn't really sort of fully engage with that answer. But he did a little podcast episode on it actually, on my view, soon after. People can check that out. Keep me to write a response to that. Maybe I will at some point. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I've said to him, next time you're in the UK, let's do it again.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if this could be a part 2. Sounds like there should be a part 2.
That would be a lot. It'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, yeah. I love it when you can be really spirited but friendly, and yeah, get stuck into the Molinism.
Yeah, the Molinism
But
thing, I'm interested to hear your counters to that.
right, got it. So why has nobody thought about this? I mean, to put the issue very very simply is, without getting into the more detailed argument that I was posing to Craig, is, I mean, I think that the idea of libertarian free will, strong free will, where it's just totally up to you what you're going to do. I think that's incompatible with the idea that there is a prior fact of the matter as to what you're going to do. So for the Molinist, like, so let's say, you know, I'm moral decision whether to kill someone or not kill them. I don't know don't know why I picked that example. Let's say I kill them. You know, but it was a free choice whether to kill this person or not kill. But for the Molinist, from the moment of creation, before creation, there was a fact of the matter as to what you would do in those circumstances. And God you know, used that. God created with reference to that constraint about that fact of the matter as to what you would do in those circumstances. I think that's incompatible with free will. If there's the idea is that there is no fact of the matter about what you're going to do in that precise scenario. It's just totally up to you. So yeah, I mean that's the intuitive point. But there's more details to that sort of way of pressing it. What do you think?
I think, well, I've always thought free will and predestination go hand in hand when it comes to, I guess, God. I've been pressed on pretty hard because I can never think something can be solely free will, especially when things even such as like behavior genetics exist.
All
Uh,
right. I see. So you're sort of
yeah.
Calvinist, doesn't it?
Well, I would say it's a cross between both, more compatibilist than anything. I can't be 100% free will
Yes.
or 100% predestination, especially since there's that whole
Yes.
even example in scripture in the book of Samuel when Saul is going after David. Saul gets David asks God if he's going to if he goes to the town of Kalani, will Saul be there and will Saul deliver him over to these people? And then he begs God to answer the question for him. And God's like, yes, he will be there and they will deliver you over to Saul. So David doesn't go. It's like, well, was God wrong? Did he have free will there? It's like, yes, he had free will. And it was both. I guess in that sense, it was a free will to ask and get the answer and not go. But God wasn't necessarily wrong just because it didn't actually happen either, the whole event,
Mm.
because he didn't go. Uh, so that singular
Mm.
story really changed my mind on a few things with free will and predestination, but I can never choose Calvinism either because I just feel like an all-loving God, by definition, can't force his creation to follow. Uh,
Right.
so I think it's a mixture of God draws us to him, but we also have the freedom to choose God's grace as well. So
Right.
I'd have to
That's
iron out that a little bit more, but I think
that sounds good
thoughts
to
that come to
me.
mind right now, I think that's what it is for me.
Do you think God knows what you're going to do though tomorrow?
Yes.
Yeah. So you don't. But
Yeah.
if it's free will, doesn't that mean there's no fact of the matter as to what you're going to do?
Well, is it foreknowledge or is he predestining me to do something tomorrow?
I guess I was just talking about foreknowledge. Yeah.
Or so are you
I just
saying
think.
because God has foreknowledge, therefore I don't have the free will to choose something to happen?
I guess I think free will is incompatible with foreknowledge um because if there is, I think if you're free, there is no fact of the matter as to what you're going to do. And so if there's no fact of them, you know, it's just until you make that moment of choosing, it's totally open. There's no fact of the matter. And so if there's no fact of the matter, there's nothing to know. So God can't know. I suppose that would be the idea.
Does that stop at human choice? Is that also like within the choices of nature itself? Like let's say a meteor's coming to Earth and would God have no awareness of the meteor, therefore he can't stop the meteor?
Well, if something is in the inanimate world, I mean, not everything is free will, right? If there are some deterministic processes in nature, or I guess you've got quantum mechanical probability, but it's something can be very, very probable. So yeah, if there's deterministic processes in nature, then God could know. But if 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 it's just genuine radical free will, then I don't think God can know because I don't think there's any fact of the matter. There's also issues about whether the future's there. I think you could make sense of it if you believe the future existed. So philosophers disagree, right, whether the future exists. But I guess
Yeah.
I'm more of what we call a presentist, that the future doesn't exist. And if it's genuine free will, then until you make that decision, there's just the future's not there. There's no fact of the matter as to what you're going to do. And if there's no fact of the matter, there's nothing for God to know. God's going to wait there thinking, come on, hope you make the right choice, my friend.
So I guess what do you make of the story I just mentioned then about God telling David not to go to that city because he knew that those people would deliver him over to Saul?
So God knew what they would do, but it didn't
Yes.
happen.
It didn't happen
I
because
mean,
he
that
didn't
would,
go.
yeah. So that would fit with what Molinists say, right? They say, there is a fact matter about what you would do. Uh, I mean, look, I'm not a biblical inerrantist. I'm happy to think. I think the Bible just gets lots of things wrong. So I'm not going to. So it wouldn't, because I'm that kind of. It wouldn't tie me to
Oh, I see. Yeah.
if I if I thought there was some wrong. But let me try and engage with it. Yeah, like, I mean, look, it just not everything is radical free will. There are, and that's a problem, I suppose, for people who do believe, like myself, believe in sort of strong libertarian free will. That there's still a sense in which you can say someone's probably going to do something. If someone's like a very bad character, they're probably going to do the wrong. They might not, but they're probably going to. So I still think even if there's strong free will, we can make judgments about what's likely to happen, or maybe what's pretty much inevitable, and God's going to be pretty good at those judgments, being omniscient. So yeah, so it doesn't mean it's like a wild free for all. So there could be still occasions in which God can say with confidence,
Okay.
this is going to happen, even though in principle it's free will. I just know these people are maybe so driven by their desires, or so ignorant, they're just gonna. There's no way they're gonna even engage the free choice. They're just gonna do it. But
Okay. Oh, I just noticed we only have
I
2
don't know.
minutes left. Do you still have time? Do you have, like,
Um,
5, 3 minutes? 2
Go
minutes?
on. Yes, 3.5.
3.5, okay. I'll get you out of here quickly. Okay. I assume this one's gonna be a no, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Have you ever had a paranormal or supernatural encounter?
Oh yeah. Oh, go on. We can do 5. um, um, Depends what you mean by. Well, one I said on the Joe Rogan show actually was. I mean, the one kind of sort of difficult to explain thing, but I mean, it's not like an incredibly mind blowing. Right, I'm rambling. Let me start again. So yeah, I mean, an old school friend who I hadn't seen for 20 years happened to be thinking about them one day. Just sort of don't think I thought about them very often. They're sort of friend of a friend. They'd become a friend of a friend because I hadn't seen them. But and then I was contacted next day to say they'd quite tragically passed away that very day. So, it's one of those occasions that you think about this person and they've in quite tragic circumstances. But in terms of more spiritual things, actually something I wrote about in my book. I've had a couple of occasions where I've suddenly lost consciousness in a quite inexplicable way. One unfortunately was just over a year ago, where it was in the middle of the city centre, and I fell and banged my head on a stone wall and on the ground and got a couple of brain bleeds and was in a bad way for a little bit of a while. But about 8 years ago, I had another one of these, and of just suddenly losing consciousness. And afterwards having an experience that it's hard to describe. Maybe I should have planned this. Hard to describe what I remember, but it felt like, when you're so completely absorbed in life and you just go on an autopilot, and then you sort of not even self-aware, and then you suddenly realize, oh, I'm here now. This is real. It sort of felt like that. That it felt like I'd woken up to a reality that's always there, but is usually you're totally unaware of in the busyness of life. But it felt like there was some kind of reality I woke up to in that couple of minutes, and I can't really describe what was going on. If I had to say describe what was going on, I would say it felt like a conversation, but not like, oh hi. It felt like in some way I was conversing with someone, something. But yeah, so I guess that's the closest I've had to a mystical experience of just this kind of, and it gives me a sense of, I suppose, that there is something. When you think about the afterlife, you sort of think it's so far away, and is it really there? Or we hope it is, or I don't know. At least if you're a bit unsure of things like me. But then give me a sense that there's a reality that's there, that's obvious, that's familiar, that you will be like, of course, it's that, you know. So something like that. That was what I got from this experience.
Interesting. Wait, do you believe in hell?
Um. So no, I guess not hell, but I'm a very liberal Christian, and liberal Christians tend to believe in be universalists, right? But the problem is, I don't think God's all powerful, so it could be, So then that opens up to maybe God can't save everyone, and it does seem in the New Testament like, um, Jesus is limited in doing things when people aren't up for it. When people have to sort of be engaged with it, and it goes better when people are engaged and sort of. So maybe I guess I'm agnostic between universalism and annihilationism. There may be, maybe you have to be a bit open to it. Not, I don't think you have to be a Christian, but maybe you have to be kind of open to being saved to be saved. And some people might not be open to it. So yeah, I'm agnostic between those two options.
Okay. Okay, last question for you. One question you would ask God if you could ask him a question right now, knowing he would answer right here, right now. What would you ask him?
Oh God, there's too much I want to know. There's too much I want to know. There's too much I want to know. I suppose have we got, what's the right religion would be a pretty important one for life, wouldn't it? I mean, there's loads of philosophical questions I want the answer to, but I suppose that would be. Although, I'm not sure whether it matters. Does it matter that much if you get the wrong religion? I, I think the religions are different, and they can't all be right. And if one of them's right, it's better to believe that one, and it's probably going to give you a better idea of a better relationship with God if you're in the right religion. But I'm not sure it matters that much. I think all of these great religions that have survived the test of time do a pretty good job at bringing the community together and connecting them to God. So maybe another provocative thing to end on there. I'm not sure God's that bothered if you get the wrong religion, but I do want to know.
Cool. Well, Philip, appreciate the time. Any last comments, advice, wisdom you want to leave with our viewers?
Oh, I haven't got any wisdom. Sorry. But I think it's been a really fun conversation. Thanks for which is a bit of wisdom from Jesus that that is not said, that one of the lines from Jesus is not said that much. That's my favorite. I love the be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. I always come back to that. And I was thinking, to me, it's how hard to sound what Jesus is getting at. To me, that means like you've got to play the game of the world. You've got to kind of compromise a bit, and you can't just. But if you compromise too much and you lose your ideals, you lose your sense of yourself, your true ethics, then that's rubbish. So just that's what that means to me. That be as shrewd as serpents, as innocent as doves. That kind of beautiful paradox. I've been thinking about that a lot recently. Maybe a less often quoted, at least for non-Christians, saying of Jesus. So I haven't got any wisdom, but that's a good one from Jesus.
Cool. Well, Phil, appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. Nice chatting to you, Devin. Take care.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.